Hi everyone, this is Richard in Denver, Colorado, December 2021, and this is a two-part series on troubleshooting and repairing the AC heater blower. This is for a 1999 BMW Z3 Roadster. So the other morning I had an early morning errand and it was below freezing here, so I ran the car for a while as I drove to the business place, and it warmed up. At some point when it was warm, I turned on the blower. No heater blower, no heat, nothing. So I checked the AC, same thing. The AC blower was not working. On this car, the blower services both the AC and the heater, so neither was working. So I knew I was going to do some troubleshooting, so when I got home, I thought I'll do some research first and wait till it warms up outside, then I'll get out there and do some hands-on testing. This is my approach. Okay, so the problem is that the heater motor does not run for either AC or heater. Possible causes could be many. It could be the motor, it could be the dash switch, it could be a relay, it could be a fuse, it could be the ignition switch, or something else. And with all the integrated electronics on these cars, it sometimes can be difficult to isolate the cause. So my options were to use diagnostic scanners or traditional troubleshooting. So I have three scanners. I have a standard OBD2 scanner, I have a C110 scanner, and a Schwab higher end scanner. But none of them were any use because they couldn't communicate with my car. There was some kind of electronic break in the communication, so I didn't get any useful information out of them. So I had to resort to traditional troubleshooting. So that, of course, involved some study and some wiring diagrams, and then after that I could put together a test plan. So what I did was I got my Z3 service manual. It's the Bentley, and this is a very useful manual. And so I read all the sections that were related to heater and AC blower operation, and then at the rear of the manual there are electrical diagrams. So I found the electrical diagram that pertains to this car, and this is what it looks like. So this is the sub-circuit for the blower, and it's composed here. It shows the ignition switch. Here's the fuse box in the engine compartment. This is a relay. It's called the K4 relay for the heater blower. This is the actual switch in the dash with all the 5 positions. These are wires that then feed current through some resistors eventually to the blower motor. So if the blower motor isn't working, it could be a problem here, it could be a problem here, or in the relay, or the fuse box, or the ignition switch. Somewhere in that circuit, something isn't right. So my approach then is to first I thought I'll check out this F20 fuse. It's a 30 amp fuse in the P90 fuse relay box, which is in the engine compartment, and I'll test that to make sure it's a good fuse. If it is, that means that this line here should be hot, battery hot. This over here is the ignition switch, and there's a wire that comes into it that's always hot, and it has, of course, the 4 positions. Position 2 is where all the lights and accessories are on, but the engine is not running. Position 3 is when you crank the starter and the engine starts, then it backs off to position 2. When it's in position 2 or 3, this line should be hot, and that would connect to pin 86. This over here is the relay. This is the K4 heater blower relay, and it has 4 pins, 30, 87, 85, and 86. The way this works is when you turn the ignition on, this becomes hot, electricity flows through this solenoid, creates a magnetic field that comes over, closes this contact. Pin 30 is always hot, assuming this is a good fuse. So this will always be hot. The moment this closes, electricity flows from this hot line through pin 30 to pin 87. Pin 87 then feeds electricity to your switch. The switch then would, depending on the speed, feed electricity down one of these circuits with different resistors depending on the speed. Eventually the electricity comes and goes through the motor into ground. So what we'll do is I'm going to first, when I get to the car, I will check to make sure this fuse is good. If it is, then this line should be hot at pin 30. And then once I know that, then we can check these other pins once I turn the ignition switch on. So by the way, here is another diagram. This one I found on the internet. So this shows the car outline. This is where the fuse box is at, up here. Here's a close-up of the fuse box. There are fuses and relays. The relay for the blower motor is the K4 relay. There are two versions. There's an orange one or a light green one. The orange one was for the older cars. The light green is used on the newer cars. They're basically the same. They're multi-purpose relays. The only difference is that the green one has two 87 pins, whereas the orange one only has one. But the two 87 pins in the light green one are connected in parallel, so it doesn't affect anything. So this is the K4 relay that we're going to want to look at. Over here, this is what the relay looks like, and this is the green one because it has 5 pins, and then here is the schematic. And again, pin 30 is always going to be live, battery power live. So N86 will become live when you turn on the ignition. When you turn on the ignition, electricity will flow through 86, create a magnetic field. It'll close that'll activate the solenoid. It'll close the contact. Once this contact closes, electricity from the pin 30 will flow through and come out at the 287 pins. Once those 287 pins are hot, then electricity will flow to the switch in your dash, and depending on how you set it, it'll be slow or fast, and that electricity will flow and activate the motor. So we're going to start with checking the fuse box, and then I created some test wires. We'll take the relay out of the car, hook up these test wires, and that'll allow us access to the pins so we can test them. And then we'll turn on the ignition, we'll test the pins once the ignition is on, and we'll see what happens. And from there, the problem will become obvious, and then it's just a matter of fixing it. So, okay, so that was the end of part 1, and we'll continue in part 2. Please see part 2 for the rest of the story, and we'll continue. Thank you.